What is up, guys? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We're here for, of course, UFC 259, the preview. What a fantastic night of fights we've got ahead of us. A 15-fight card, which come fight night, and, touch wood that nothing happens. All of the fights taking place. We only had one fight in miss weight. Of course, Askarov came in at 127, 2 pounds or 1 pound over the contracted limit at 126, of course, up against Joseph Benavidez. So you have to feel for him. It's always Benavidez on the wrong end of bad luck, isn't it? But hopefully he can get the win tonight and put himself back in the title contention. But of course, the main event, which is why we're here, and obviously the triple header of title fights that we've got on tonight. Obviously, we're kicking off with Jan Blachowicz versus Israel Adesanya, the middleweight champion, moving up to light heavyweight, of course. Obviously, he's pretty much cleaned out his division. Adesanya, he beat Paulo Costa at 2-3, where obviously Jan Blachowicz did pick up the title on the night in the Flesh Forum over at Fight Island. And, it's only really Darren Till, maybe rather than Vettori, who obviously faces Darren Till. If he wins that fight, you could potentially see rematches. Obviously, you've got Costa and Whittaker fighting, both of them having losses against Adesanya now. So you can see the reason why he did move up. And obviously, he's been talking about a lot about how it's the coaches and, the people, Eugene Berman, the people at City Kick Boston have almost told him to move up. And, they believe in him and he believes in them. And it shows the characteristics and the environment that gym has, and it's such a amazing gym and environment to look at as an MMA fan. You've got SBG, who had that big rise up, and City Kickboxing are very much on there. I think we might have eclipsed SBG, maybe at least on a pure view perspective. Obviously they've got Alex Volkanovski tied there, they've got Israel Adesanya tied there, Dan Hooker, you got Kai Kara France on that in that gym, who's fighting tonight against Rodrigo Bontorin, of course. There's just absolute killers. Carlos Ulberg, who obviously won his contract on the Contender Series last year. It's a fantastic setup they got down there in New Zealand. And obviously coming in tonight, 20-0 undefeated, maybe the most likely to attempt or to match or equal Khabib Nurmagomedov, 29-0. But again, it's still such a long way away, such a huge thing. 9 fights. It's very unpredictable as is tonight's fight. Obviously, he's moving up. He didn't even hit the 205 limit, did he? He came in at 200 pounds, which, is brave of him. I see a lot of people comparing the Anderson Silva DC fight. Anderson Silva to that fight on a day's notice. And, we saw a 5-round, almost domination from DC, who got the job done on the night. Obviously, he didn't want to go toe-to-toe, so it was more of a wrestling competition, more of the grappling bout that we saw from DC. And a very smart fight, which is why he's one of the greatest of all time. And obviously, in that champ bracket, that Israel Adesanya's going to look to break tonight. But yeah, 20-0, he dominated Paulo Costa, he dominated Robert Whittaker. His toughest fight, or at least his 2 toughest fights in the UFC, have been obviously Kelvin Gastelum and Marvin Vettori, as we mentioned earlier. But Kelvin Gastelum, that was almost the making of Israel Adesanya. I think Anderson Silva probably was the making of him, just because it was him. It was almost like a change in the guard sort of moment for him. Obviously, Kelvin Gastelum was the one that we saw, him really get tested at 2-2 going to that 5th round. That he just, the famous "prepared to die" sort of comment that he made in the octagon in the last round. Obviously, he went on to win that fight, becoming the interim champion. And since then he's been on fire. We had the Romero blip in terms of it not being what we expect from Adesanya, but obviously it takes 2 to tango. And we're hoping tonight that we see him dance one more time. Obviously, we're not going to see fans in there, and it's weird. We've got a fight of this a fight card of this magnitude with no fans in the arena, obviously due to the pandemic. Because in the Apex, it could be eerily quiet. It's a strange one. Obviously, we see Texas and Florida opening back up to fans now. So, we'll be looking to see maybe these bigger pay-per-views, maybe in different states to Vegas. But, Jan Blachowicz, I've grown to like him since he's become champion. Obviously, he's someone who's almost like Bisping. He's seen more success later on in his career. Obviously, 38 years of age, only turned 38 2 weeks ago. But, he's put on a heavy streak. That Dominic Reyes performance was phenomenal. The bruising of the ribs that you saw from Dominic Reyes, broke his nose, and then finished him to become the champion. Obviously, John Jones vacated the belt last year to move up to heavyweight. We're still waiting on that. Obviously, we've got to wait what happens at 260 between Ngannou and Miocic. But, he got a split decision win against Jacare. He knocked out, Luke Rockhold, former champion. And we, maybe that's the outlier. We see what happens when a 185 or a true 185 moves up to 205 against Jan Blachowicz. Obviously, he lost to Tiago Santos, but he was winning that fight up until the knockout. Obviously, Tiago Santos fights tonight against Alexander Wreckage. But he got a phenomenal career, and he's 8-1 in his last 9 fights, looking to go 9-1 in 10, and it's his first title defense. Now, if he loses tonight, I think it would be a shame. Now, I am an Adesanya fan, so I will be, rooting for him. But if he loses tonight, whoever, wins tonight will very much be the better competitor. It's going to be interesting to see how much he weighs tonight. Obviously, he made 205 last night. But if he's 230, there's going to be a, 30-pound, 20-pound, maybe minimum difference between the two fighters. And it's pretty much skill versus power at this point. We'll be expecting Adesanya to keep his range, keep the distance. He has got a reach advantage over Blachowicz, and I think all of, if not most of the light heavyweights, he's got a reach advantage over. So it shows where he's at. He's obviously just not put any size on for this fight, and obviously he's not to cut down to 185. So we will have a look, of course, at the Taylor tape. 27-8, that experience, but obviously we've seen now, I think this is 106th fight for Adesanya in terms of, all of combat sports and all of his time in combat sports. 6'2" versus 6'4", so get 2-inch height advantage. The 5-pound differential, that's not too much, but come find out when everyone's refueled and rehydrated their systems, there's going to be a bit of a difference tonight. I'm expecting at least 15 to 20 pounds when they walk into the cage. But yes, 2-inch reach advantage and 1/2 inch leg reach advantage for the kickboxer, of course, which probably will help him. He is quite, he's not very broad, is he? Jan Blachowicz is very broad, he's very thick. He's got those, he's got the power. Whereas, Adesanya reminds me a bit like Wonder Boy, a little bit like maybe John Jones, Anderson Silva, where they do primarily work and focus on their speed, their movement, their ability to, throw strikes that maybe we haven't seen before. They dare to win, you could say. And Israel Adesanya is certainly daring tonight. And if he becomes champ, obviously it will be the 5th fight to do it, matching Conor McGregor, Henry Cejudo, DC, and of course Amanda Nunes is putting her featherweight title to the defense. Now, in terms of defending, if he wins tonight, he does play with a spanner work. Obviously, we've got to wait to see what happens between the rest of the middleweight contenders. And I'd imagine, whoever wins between Costa and Whittaker will get their rematch. Especially if Whittaker wins that fight, I think he's deserving it more. I think Costa, the excuses he's making, obviously being too drunk, I think he's making himself a bit disfavourable. And I think Whittaker will want that fight. Same with Till. Till is the only sort of competitor left other than Jared Cannonier, who's not faced Adesanya yet. And I think, if Darren Till beats Vettori, he's right in the mix. Obviously, got Kevin Hart and Derek Brunson next week or the week after. So there's some good contenders in there. But with maybe the layout of the land, if Adesanya does get it done within, say, 2 rounds tonight, he doesn't get touched, doesn't get hurt. There's one name which is Glover Teixeira, and Glover Teixeira has to fight for the light heavyweight title next. It doesn't matter who wins tonight. He needs that. He deserves it with the wins that he's put on recently. He'll be 42 by the end of the year. So he deserves a title shot, and he was a backup tonight. Fortunately, he weren't needed. Unfortunate for him, because he definitely deserves that moment for him. And if Jan Blachowicz wins tonight, obviously Adesanya will go back down to 185 and probably fight in September, as he does. He fights 3 times a year. He only fought twice last year, but obviously being elevated champion, you're required to fight less because you're not really chasing anything if you want being chased. But yes, we just got to make sure Glover's next. But if Adesanya puts a beating on Jan Blachowicz, maybe we'll book him against Glover. In the summer, and we'll wait until what happens between 185. But I do think it's interesting. Obviously, the talk of the John Jones fight in December. Now, John Jones is heavyweight champion. That would be interesting because obviously, and we've got to be thankful for McGregor for this. I think we've got the greatest all time conversation. Now let's have that caveat of, did you do it in 2 divisions? Did you carry 2 belts at the same time? And maybe that does appease Jones. If he goes and wins a heavyweight title in the summer, and he got a light heavyweight title or champion Adesanya, maybe Jones does come back down. And obviously, Adesanya's, repeatedly said he'd chase him up to heavyweight. And we probably do see that stupid fight. But again, if 2 titles on it, and that's probably the biggest fight in UFC history with the back and forth those two have had. And, Adesanya is becoming a star. Well, he is a superstar, but if he wins tonight, that just, tenfold is sort of stardom and celebrity status. He's then on the path of becoming like McGregor, especially in Oceania. Of course, he's a huge superstar, and it's incredible that we see these stars from these small islands. Republic of Ireland for McGregor, and obviously New Zealand for Adesanya, obviously originally and heritage from Nigeria. It's going to be could be an incredible month for African MMA. Now, I do think Adesanya. See, I want to say Adesanya is going to get the dub, and I do think he gets it done. But again, you can't discredit what Jan Blachowicz has done and the power. And it will only take one for Jan Blachowicz, I think, and if he connects him in the right spot, we've seen, Alex Pereira is the only man to have knocked out Israel Adesanya. And I was watching his podcast with Teddy Atlas, and both him and Eugene Berman were very honest and very open about why that happened and how they been able to stop that from happening once again. But if anyone's going to do it, it might be Jan Blachowicz, and that would be quite a sight to see. And again, it extrapolates Jan Blachowicz's success in the UFC and makes him a superstar. He's already a legend in Poland, the first male Polish champion that we've seen in the UFC. So there's a lot riding on tonight, and as there is in the co-main event, of course. We've got Amanda Nunes, the greatest of all time, up against Megan Anderson, someone who's been discounted, discredited, because obviously the division she's in is very thin. There's not even a ranking system, and if Megan Anderson does the upset tonight, it probably is the greatest upset of all time in mixed martial arts. It's one of those ones where you look at it and you go, yeah, it probably is the greatest upset of all time. And with there's no pressure on Megan Anderson. If she goes 50-45 in terms of favour of Amanda Nunes, 50-45 in the fans' eyes is a success to Megan Anderson. She didn't get finished, and I don't know if there's something about her that she is a 145. She's 6'3". She's got that 4-inch reach advantage over Nunes. I don't know whether the fact that there's a lack of pressure on her to do well, there's a lack of fans behind her saying that she can do it. I wonder if that makes it almost easier for her. We look at the 3 title fights. I think that it's the easiest to pick because of the differential and that the betting odds does show that. But I wonder if that almost flips it on its head and makes Anderson maybe the more likely to take the belt tonight out of the 3 challenges. It's a freak sort of show tonight. Obviously, Aljamain Sterling and Petr Yan we'll talk about in a minute. But it's a weird one. Obviously, if she loses tonight, it probably says the end for the featherweights in the UFC. Obviously, with Danielle Wolf versus Alicia Spencer. Alicia Spencer got dominated by Amanda Nunes back in the summer, of course, in her first featherweight title defense. Danielle Wolf, beats Alicia Spencer, which is a possibility because she is better on the ground, on the feet. Sorry, with her being a former boxer, of course. But obviously, Alicia Spencer, a phenomenal jiu-jitsu practitioner, and very much the favourable in that matchup. But if Danielle Wolf gets the victory, do we then do Danielle Wolf versus Amanda Nunes, and what would be her 3rd professional bout in MMA? It'd be almost selling lamb to the slaughter, almost. With all due respect to Danielle Wolf, that'd be quite the story, wouldn't it? Obviously we've got to talk about Kayla Harrison, who's can contract to PFL to at least New Year's Eve this year. So we're not going to see her come back into the UFC until maybe May next year. And obviously Clarissa Shields just became the first female to hold 4 belts in 2 different weight classes in the boxing in history. So you have got that GOAT status, sort of, the MMA GOAT versus the boxing GOAT sort of narrative that's building up. But again, Clarissa Shields is contracted to be at PFL until the end of next year at the very least. And I think by that point, Nunes might have retired, just because she's wiped out every competitor that's there. It might be a fact that she steps away, Clarissa or Kayla Harrison picks up one of the titles, featherweight title, because neither of them are going to cut down to 135, I don't imagine. And then Nunes maybe comes back and almost stomps them 2 out. Maybe again, obviously, Kayla Harrison is down the American top team with Nunes, so we can probably see that fight, inspiring maybe. But all the pressure is on Nunes tonight. Obviously, she's become a mum. She's spoken about how it's made her, a better person, more, punctual. So maybe her training's been a lot better, and maybe she will, almost go through Megan Anderson with ease. But we saw her get sloppy with Jermaine Durandame. A couple of those up kicks landed, and there's times where you think, oh, Nunes is in trouble here, but no, she's experienced enough. She was losing the fight no, it was a closer fight on the feet than we maybe was expecting. But obviously, Jermaine Durandame is a quality level kickboxer, and up there, she's up there with the best of them, with the likes of Hardy, obviously a former featherweight champion. That graphic that I think ESPN put out, Nunes has beaten every single female champion that's been in 2 divisions at bantamweight and featherweight. And she wins tonight. She's beating a second Invicta champion from featherweight as well, which is incredible. But to look at the tail of the tape, 17th Thor up against 11th Thor, that the 6th Thor and the reach advantage for Megan Anderson is really the maybe the go-to points tonight for her. I think she's a plus 700 underdog, or at least 6-1 in the UK, which is phenomenal odds. It's almost worth putting a punt on it because we know the unpredictability of this sport, and she does have 2 knockouts, 2 third-round knockouts in the locker. She's fighting a bantamweight who's come up to featherweight, so maybe that power does translate a little bit more. But it could be a rough night for Megan Anderson. But again, she's coming in to do a job. She made weight, and again, there's no pressure on her to do. All eyes are on her pretty much to see her get knocked out. Which again, I wonder if that plays an advantage in her hand almost. But yes, it could be the last time we see Nunes in the cage, maybe, because she's out of challenges after tonight. If she wins, if she loses, she obviously gets a rematch, or we see her return to bantamweight. You've got Juliana Pena there, you've got Holly Holm, fighting again, you've got Aspen still there. But again, she's cleaned out 2 divisions by herself, and it's phenomenal what she's done. So it could be the end of Nunes, it could be the end of the featherweight division as well. Who knows? But let us know your predictions. Do you think Megan Anderson can get it done? Do you think Adesanya is going to get the title tonight? Is he going to become champ? And, enter that elite status, that elite camp of the unique fighters that's only got 4 people in there at the moment? Could a 5th be entering, or Jan Blachowicz too much to him? Let's hear about that legendary Polish power. But that moves us on nicely to the 3rd title fight, of course. Petr Yan versus Aljamain Sterling. Petr Yan obviously winning that title against Jose Aldo back in back in September, July actually, on of course UFC 231 on Fight Island, the very first card that we saw on Fight Island, of course, and he put a beating on Jose Aldo. I think Uriah Faber, I've been watching the replay, they've been putting out the highlights for Petr Yan, and that head kick against Uriah Faber was disgusting. He put a beating on Uriah Faber as he did Jose Aldo, but it was a more close fight with Aldo until that finish in the 5th round, which was a very late stoppage. Petr Yan picked his spots. He adjusted very well throughout the fight, and he showed why he deserves to be, king of the bantamweights, which is a very tough division. But Aljamain Sterling's equally as tough. He's put on a good record. He's on a 5-fight win streak after that beautiful win against Corey Sandhagen last year at UFC 250. He's been in the Apex, of course, before, and fought in the Apex, where he stopped Sandhagen in the very first round by rear naked choke. And we could potentially see something similar, obviously, especially in that first round. Both fighters are very dry. Both of them, it's easier to grapple at that point. It's easier to get your hooks in up against the cage. And Aljamain Sterling will probably be looking to get, a first round, second round win. But again, it's going to be okay to go the distance, I reckon. He looks in fantastic shape. And, Matt Serra is a fantastic teacher. And you see the connection they have if you watch the Embedded on the Countdown shows this week. But, he beat Pedro Munez and Jimmy Rivera by decision. Beat Cody Starman by knee bar. Obviously has a decision over Brett Jones, so he's come back magnificently well after that Marlon Moraes loss. And he showed that he's very much the number 1 contender. Now, with a win tonight, is going to be facing probably Corey Sandhagen or TJ Dillashaw. That seems to be the fight that's being made by the UFC, which is a fantastic fight. TJ Dillashaw returning after 2 years. Corey Sandhagen obviously beating a former lightweight champion of Frankie Edgar, doing phenomenal work. But 19-3 up against 15-1. Petr Yan is looking a bit of an animal, a bit like Khabib, in terms of he looks unbeatable. But this bantamweight division is so stacked that you could equally see the title move the hands 3 or 4 times in the next 2 years. But, both of them same height, both of them made weight. I think Sterling was 134.5. It's weird that all the challengers came in underweight, albeit by half a pound for both featherweight and bantamweight. Neither of them hit that mark dead on. He's got a huge reach advantage there, 71 up against 67 inches, and a 39-inch leg reach advantage. So that reach is going to maybe help him, especially in that smaller octagon. They there's less space for him to have to close down. Petr Yan get him up against the cage, and he said, once he gets you up against the cage, he can take you back, and it's probably job done. And I think there's some truth to that. It's going to be a very interesting fight, and I think it's going to put the rest of the night up. Obviously, we've got a 15-fight card. It's going to go on for a while. It starts in 4 minutes. I think we've got 6 early prelim fights, a handful. Another 5 or 6 in terms of prelims, and then a 5-fight main card, 3 title fights, which all could go 25 minutes quite easily. So we definitely need some finishers. There's probably going to be, I reckon, 5 or 6 finishers on this card. Jan Blachowicz and Adesanya probably does get a finish. Nunes could get a finish, and could potentially see all title fights get finishes. But again, the levels here are so elite. It's literally on the knife edge. Now, to look at the rankings, of course, you've got, as we mentioned, Sunday Connects, Rob Font's up there, Cody Garbrandt's there. He'd probably fighting Jose Aldo once he's fit, although he came into a bit of hot water with that video coming out of him on the plane getting thrown off. Yeah, it is what it is. But Marlon Moraes, Frankie Edgar on slips now. Pedro Munoz, obviously, with that good win against Jimmy Rivera. Rafael Sancho, I think, still needs to come back from that Cody Garbrandt loss. So yes, Aljamain Sterling, the true number 1 contender, getting his shot finally. After 8 years in the UFC, that's a long time to be fighting in such an organisation. And only now getting his first chance. You expect probably him to be on his second chance at this point. But all that experience has done him good. And he seems like a genuinely nice guy as well. He came across well. He's had a bit back and forth with Petr Yan, but it's all been in good taste pretty much. See here, I do think, this card almost takes me back to UFC 217, when we saw 3, titles change hands, and I think we see a special night tonight. I don't know what we see. It's so unpredictable, but there is a potential of seeing 3 titles change hands, which is mental when you got Amanda Nunes on the card. But I do think we see 2 change hands at least. I'm just gonna say that. I think we see 2 titles change, and I think it'd probably be bantamweight and probably light heavyweight. But maybe that's my heart talking more than my head. Now, obviously, we've got Islam Makhachev versus Drew Dober, of course, in the lightweight division. These two meeting after a couple of cancelled fights, or one cancelled back in 2016. So 5 years later, we revisit. Obviously, Makhachev didn't have the greatest 2020s. 3 cancelled fights against Alex Hernandez, and obviously 2 back-to-back against Rafael dos Anjos. So this fight maybe is a step back for him in his career, in terms of there isn't a former champion there. But Drew Dober is a good test for him, and a worthy opponent for him. Obviously, you got Khabib back in the corner of Makhachev, and maybe there's gonna be some sort of chat about him with Dana White. I think we kind of need to leave Khabib alone. But again, he's still tempting, still prodding, trying to get him back, isn't he? But he got 18-1 up against 23-9, 5'10" versus 5'8", both of them made weight, half an inch reach advantage there for Makhachev, and 5.5 inches in the leg reach. So this could be a very one-sided fight. Makhachev's very tough. He beat Dada Ramos by decision, come off 2 decision wins, and then finishes over Cajun Johnson and Gleason Tebow. And he's very much being considered the future of the division, the dark horse, maybe. Obviously, you got the top 6. You got Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, Conor McGregor, Justin Gaethje, etc. Charles Oliveira as well. Let's not forget the elite. But I think Islam Makhachev is slowly joining them, and he will be probably up there by the end of the year. He wins tonight. Probably does fight Rafael dos Anjos later on in the year. And once you get a former title or a former champion on your resume, you then probably you're living in that top 5, top 6. Maybe put him against a Dan Hooker, Paul Felder, someone like that. Should he get a win tonight? And then he's broken into that top 6 quite convincingly then. Now, obviously, in the light heavyweight division, we've got Tiago Santos versus Alexander Wreckage, which is probably the perfect fight to open this card. It's going to, it's guaranteed violence pretty much. Tiago Santos coming off the back of 2 bad losses. Well, I say 1 bad loss against Glover Teixeira in that fight back in November. Of course, the rear naked choke in the apex. It was, of course, Glover Teixeira showing his resurgence. But obviously, it was Tiago Santos' first fight since coming back from tearing both knees, tearing both ligaments in his knees after that John Jones fight. So, and he's admitted that he was a bit tentative, a bit worried about, re-injuring himself and putting himself out for another year. But Alexander Wreckage, again, no joke in his decision. Obviously, he had that split decision loss to Volkan Smith. Many thought that Wreckage done enough to win. He then beat Anthony Smith back in August by decision. So he's pretty much got a clean slate. Obviously, head kick knockout against Jimmy Manuel. Finished against Devin Clark. That's the elite of the light heavyweights, and he's on the right path. And to have a look at the ranks, of course, he is fourth. You've got Tiago Santos in second, so winning tonight would put him probably next in line for a title. Unless your name's got Teixeira, of course, because Teixeira needs that title shot more than anyone else. Obviously, got Dominic Cruz versus Yuri Prochazka coming up too. Magomed Ankalaev had a good win last week, so it's a good spot for Wreckage if he gets a good win. And it's a fantastic striker, fantastic kickboxer, only 29 years of age, still very much young. And the light heavyweight division's fried it again. Teixeira's probably got one fight left in him, which will be that title bout. If he wins or loses, you could probably see him retire. And Anthony Smith is on a bit of a slope where if he loses one or two, you probably see him get cut. Unfortunately, we saw Overeem and Julia dos Santos get cut this week. Absolute legends of the sport, and Anthony Smith is on a slippery path now. But yes, Alexander Wreckage, Tiago Santos, if he wins tonight, he's probably looking at Jan Blachowicz going, I've already beaten you, so I'm next in line for the title. And, let's get a rematch on it and to finally get it gold now that John Jones is in the picture. But yes, to have a look quickly at the tape, 21-8, that's 13-2, and the prelims are getting underway. Woody Hardy prelims are getting underway now. 6-4 versus 6-2, so Wreckage, huge stature for him. It could be good to see him up against an Adesanya, maybe same height. Adesanya's got an 18-inch on him, so 2 inches more than Wreckage. It's crazy the build of Adesanya and how tall he is and how long he is for a middleweight. I think he has a longer reach than all of the light heavyweights and maybe all of the heavyweights other than your monsters in in the name of Stephen Struve. Although Stephen Struve's now retired, so maybe he's not part of the conversation. But yes, I think Wreckage does get the win tonight. I think Tiago Santos might not have enough, but again, it'd be interesting to see him come back because he was on a hot streak up until that John Jones fight, and he put on a good performance of himself and showed, just why he's in title contention, does being title contention. And that moves us on to the last fight that we're going to be looking at, which is of course Dominic Cruz versus Casey Kenny. Now, when I saw Dominic Cruz talking to Ariel Helwani, I was a bit worried for him. He didn't look 100% of himself, but he's obviously gone through, fight week, weight cut perfectly fine. And he looks healthy and he looked well. I was watching his interview with BT Sport and, what the guys are doing there, Adam Catterall, Nick P, etc., doing fantastic work. For MMA in the UK, probably the best in the game. Well, definitely the best in the game in the UK. But he's coming off the back of 2 losses to Cody Garbrandt and, Henry Cejudo, and obviously he was mentioning and talking with Adam Catterall that, he took that fight on short notice, whereas Henry Cejudo was preparing for, a title fight against Jose Aldo, so he was in camp prior to the lockdown. We've got that whole Keith Peterson sort of scenario going on where he's not, he's pretty much banned Keith Peterson from refereeing and stuff. And he's up against Casey Kenny again. He's on a win streak himself, 3-fight win streak after beating Nathaniel Wood in 2020 by decision. Of course, he's on a hot streak himself. He's very much someone who's coming up through that bantamweight division, isn't he? And it's a good test of Dominic Cruz to see if he can still almost hang in there with the best, or if he's almost past it. I think he pretty much knows that himself at the moment. Obviously, Casey Kenny made some very poor comments about Megan Anderson's fight tonight, of course. And I don't think many want to be seeing him win tonight, but obviously it is a test of skill. It is the best man wins. And, if he beats Dominic Cruz, a former bantamweight champion, probably and still the greatest bantamweight that we've seen. I think TJ did shot in that conversation, of course. But I think for what Dominic Cruz done to that division, how many defenses he's made, etc., I think he is the greatest of all time in that class as well. But it's a good test for him. If he gets back in the win comes tonight, who knows? He'll be back at 14th at the moment, I think, in the rankings. So that puts him in a good spot to start moving up. Facing your likes of, you're looking at, he's 11th in the rankings, so then you're looking at Jimmy Rivera, Rafael Sanchez. That'd be a great fight for Dominic Cruz. Pedro Munoz, Frankie Edgar again. Edgar, Cruz, 2 legends in the game. Again, that'd be a fantastic fight to make. Muhammad Moraes, is coming off the back of 3 losses, I believe, now. So, yeah, Dominic Cruz win tonight is a must hit. But again, if Casey Kenny beats him, he puts himself in the bantamweight rankings and maybe puts Dominic Cruz into retirement. Who knows? With all due respect to the former champ. And yes, I think that's a good place to leave it there. The fights are starting. So let us know your prediction down there before we do head off. But, you've got Kyler Phillips versus Song Yadong, who's a fantastic fight. You've got Kai Kara Francis, who mentioned earlier, Joseph Benavidez, Tim Elliott, Jordan Espinoza, Carlos Albert versus Kennedy, and Chukwu, which, again, a fantastic fight. Sean Brady, Jake Matthews. It's an absolute stacked card and probably going to be the pay-per-view of the year, the fight card of the year. And it's going to be interesting to see what narrative you see at the end of it and what we see later down the line as an effect of this card. But yes, make sure to hit that subscribe, but make sure to hit that follow button if you're watching on Twitch or on Facebook. Make sure to follow CageChat MMA on the socials, on Instagram and Twitter, etc. And I'll see you guys on Monday for a review.